All right, Leviticus chapter 2 and verse 11 is our opening verse. The notes are out there. They're online as well in the description box, everybody. Don't forget to, if you're watching, give us a thumbs up. Give us a subscribe. If you're not subscribed, share, like this, send it out to somebody else. Leviticus chapter 2, verses 11 through 13. Now, I got some of it italicized. And PM, are we still on? Because I don't see it back here. We're good? Okay. After all I just said about you, and it goes off on the screen behind me? That's funny. All right. So Leviticus 2, it says the following. It's the Scriptures version. It says, no grain offering which you bring to Yahuwah, to Yah, is made with leaven. For you do not burn any leaven or any honey in an offering to Yah made by fire. Bring them to Yahuwah as an offering of the first fruits, but they are not burned on the slaughter place for a sweet fragrance. Verse 13. And season with salt every offering of your grain offering, and do not allow the salt of the covenant of your Elohim to be lacking from your grain offering. With all your offerings you bring salt. For a few moments this morning, the title and the topic of the message is the salt of the covenant. The salt of the covenant. You guys know the prayer here? If you know it at home, please pray it with us. Abba, give us eyes to see, ears to hear, and hearts that are willing to obey. In the Master's name, amen. Okay, salt of the covenant. Now, obviously, last couple of weeks, we've been talking about the priesthood and comparing the priesthood, the Levitical priesthood, what we would call the Old Testament, the Tanakh, the Torah, and who we are. There is a one-to-one comparison. There's a teaching that comes out of it. I know we've probably all bumped into this. We've all thought about this before, or you've had people say this to you, because when you say that you keep the commandments, one of the first things that sort of pops up in conversation is, well, how do you keep all the commandments? Because there's a lot of commandments we just can't do. There's no temple anymore, right? So what about all the commandments like this one that we just read? We can't do those. And yet the Master told us in the Sermon on the Mount that anyone who teaches to do the commandments will be great in the kingdom of heaven. Anyone who takes away even the least of these commandments and teaches others to do so, removes them, they will be the least in the kingdom. Now, I don't want to be the least, but it is kind of hard sometimes to figure out how does a commandment actually work? How does it apply to us? Does it apply to us? And we talked about this last week, the idea between the letter of the law and the spirit of the law. The letter of the law is the way it is written. What we are reading right here is the letter of the law. Now, evidently and obviously, there is no temple. So what is the spirit of this law? And by spirit, maybe another word to maybe make it a little bit more clear, especially when you speak and you talk to somebody else about this. When we say spirit of the law, we mean the meaning of the law, what its actual intent always was. Because Father always speaks to us in types, parables, shadows, metaphors, similes. He gives us one thing that's real, that means something. And he means when he says to do it, but we do it because it also has another meaning, a bigger meaning, a broader meaning. So this is one of those things, and there's a whole bunch of commandments like this that you just can't do. It's impossible. There's no temple, there's no Levitical priesthood, and even if there was, would we have to do this anymore? Well, we now understand that, the temple, there is actually a temple, another message for another day, but it's not one in the Middle East, it's not one in Jerusalem, and whether or not they build one or not, it still will not be the temple. It will not be the place where Yah has his people come to worship. That has changed. The example is done. The type, the shadow has served its purpose. And now we're all supposed to understand the bigger picture. So the salt of the covenant. That's one of those things, actually, that many people don't even realize that there is a covenant of salt. And here it is in this text, a covenant of salt. So what does this commandment mean? Well, all of chapter 2, chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3, chapter 4 of Leviticus are about the 5 offerings that are that the people bring, that the priesthood bring before Father. And one of those offerings is the grain offering, which is what we were reading about in our opening verse in Leviticus 2. The grain offering is just that, grain that gets brought before Father, but it cannot be baked with or have leaven in it. This becomes a burnt offering. This is stuff that gets put on the fire, just like the lambs, the goats, all the other things, the pigeons, the turtle doves, for the other 4 types of sacrifices that there were. So if we're following the analogy, if we're trying to understand the letter of the law to understand the spirit of the law is that there are multiple sacrifices that the people have to bring, and the priest then present before Father. And they have to be done a certain way. In this particular instance, no leaven, but there must be salt. Not just on the bread offering, but salt on all of the offerings. All of the meat that gets given has to be salted meat. Here is just a couple of other scriptures speaking about a salt covenant. This is Leviticus chapter 18, verse 19. I think it's number 2 on your notes. It says, "In all the contributions of the set-apart gifts, which the children of Israel present to Yahuwah, I have given to you and your sons and daughters with you as a law forever. It is a covenant of salt before Yahuwah with you and your seed with you." So he's speaking to Aaron and to his children, because what winds up happening is when people bring their offerings into the temple at this particular time, the tabernacle, we're talking about meat. It's lamb. It may be beef. It could be, like I said, a pigeon or turtle dove. What was edible, I'm not sure, I believe they didn't eat the pigeons, but pigeons just got all burnt up. But the other meats and the breads and the grains that came in, a portion of it was burnt. Some of it was, all of it was burnt. There's something called a burnt offering. But a lot of it, only a portion of it was burnt at the altar. The other portion was given to the Levites. It was the way Father fed them. They had no inheritance anywhere else. So Father had the people of Israel literally feed the priest who served as the people brought their offerings. They presented those offerings to Father, the blood of it, the meat of it, but it also provided for them. And not just for them, it says for you, for your sons, and for your daughters. It's the way their whole family lived. We fast forward to the time of Saul, and Saul speaks to us about if you are a preacher of the gospel, you live on the gospel. That's that you don't muzzle the mouth of the ox that treads the grain. Well, here's the first instance of it right here. This is how Father provided. And what does he call it? A salt offering. Why? Because every offering had to have salt on it. Here's 2 Chronicles chapter 13 and verse 5. It says, "Do you not know that Yahuwah, Elohim of Israel, has given the reign, the kingdom of Israel, to David forever?" So Father made a covenant with David that his throne would be thrown over Jerusalem forever. And this is just reiterating that. So whose throne lasts forever? King David's throne. It's to him and to his sons by a covenant of salt. So even when the covenant is made with David, it's a salt covenant. So here's just a little representation, a little explanation of what salt means. And not just salt, leaven, because this is really about salt and leaven. Salt, as presented in the scripture, refers to, number 1, purity and preservation. There was no refrigerators back in that day. How did you preserve meat? You salted it. It had to be salted. That's the way that you would preserve meat. So that's one at least a physical reason for this. But it goes beyond that, because it's not just for preservation of the meat, it's for preservation of the priest. It's for preservation of the people who come and bring the offering. Father promised to preserve King David's line, that a king of Jerusalem, that David's throne would last forever. It's a salt covenant. It's a separated, pure covenant that preserves something. So it means a whole bunch of different things in its application as it's actually given, and those meanings still bear something to us today as well. You can see on the picture there's just everybody coming and bringing a different offering. And the reason you brought those offerings, that's really not the message for today, but there was a reason. Each one of the 5 offerings that individuals brought meant something. One would be a trespass offering. One would be a sin offering. One would be a peace offering. One would be a grain offering. Each, depending upon what was going on in your life, if you had sinned and you knew you had sinned, well, what did you bring to the tabernacle? A sin offering. That's what you brought. And the priest would take it and do what they had needed with it, salted it, all the rest of that. So the offerings are the things that were brought by the people. All together, a salt covenant. King David. We just read that King David's throne is to be forever. Well, who is, or how is King David's throne going to be established forever? His son will come, and the son of David will sit upon his father's throne forever. We're not talking about Solomon or any of the other sons that came after. None of them sit on the throne forever. We are referring to the Mashiach. The covenant Father made with David was a salt covenant of someone who's going to come, a son of David, and sit on the throne forever. Here is Ecclesiastes chapter 1. Just going to make a point here. Ecclesiastes chapter 1 and verse 1. It says, the words of Keheleth, and Keheleth just means, I put it there in parentheses, it means the assembler, the person who put it all together. And in this particular case, it's talking about Solomon. Solomon being the writer. At least that's what's believed. The words of Keheleth, son of David. Solomon is a son of David. Solomon sits on the throne. So David's a type of Messiah. Solomon's a type of Messiah. All the kings who will sit on the throne are following along if they keep the commandments and the instruction. But Father promised that that throne would last forever as a salt covenant. So he is the son of David, the sovereign, or the king of Jerusalem. David was the king of Jerusalem. So here's Zechariah chapter 9 and verse 9. This is one of our morning mannas last week. It says, rejoice greatly, O daughter of Zion. Shout, O daughter of Jerusalem. See, your king is coming to you. He is righteous and endowed with deliverance or salvation. He is humble and riding on a donkey, a colt, the foal of a donkey. Now that should sound real familiar to all of us. This is the Passover story. This is the 10th day of the first month when you pick the lamb, the day that Messiah rides into Jerusalem on a donkey. Who is he? Your sovereign, the king of Jerusalem is coming. He is the fulfillment of the salt covenant given to King David. All right, we're just trying to put the lines together. So we've got a couple of just foundational concepts or ideas here. So is Messiah a son of David? Absolutely. Here's Matthew chapter 15. There's a whole bunch of references we could look at. I just picked this one. It says, a woman of Canaan came from those borders and cried out to him, to the Messiah, saying, have compassion on me, O Master. And what'd she call him? Son of David. My daughter is badly demon-possessed. I think one of our morning manners, we read about Bartimaeus, the blind man, who at Jericho hears that Messiah is coming, hears that Yahushua is coming. And what does he do? He also cries out, Son of David, have mercy on me. So there were people that absolutely got it. They realized what was going on. Others, of course, did not, or at least until later. So the question is Messiah the actual product of the salt covenant? Yeah, he is the son of David, the king of Jerusalem, who came into Jerusalem riding on a donkey. And what does he do? John 1:12 says, but as many as received him, that is Messiah, to them he gave the authority to become children of Elohim, to those believing in his name. So we just finished reading, let me go back there real quick so you see it. We just finished reading that the salt covenant is to the priests and to all of their family. But the salt covenant is also to the line of David and all of his sons as well. Messiah fits both classes. Messiah is our high priest, and he is the king of Israel. He is the one for whom the salt covenant always spoke of. So, having said that now, we just read in John 1:12, what are we? Sons. Sons, yes, of Father, Elohim, but who also made us sons? Messiah did. Here's Hebrews chapter 2, verse 10. We read this last week. It says, for it was fitting for him, meaning Messiah, because of whom all are and through whom all are, bringing many sons to glory. What did Messiah do? He brought many, now we say sons, it means sons and daughters, right? It means children, all of us. So it's not a patriarchy thing. It's a general term. It means all of us. Bringing many sons to glory. That's why when we read in Isaiah, and it gives us a description of the one who is Emmanuel, El with us, the one who is the faithful witness. He is called Mighty God, Counselor, Prince of Peace, and he's also called Father. He's called Father. Not the Father, but he is a Father. He birthed us into the kingdom. Does that make sense to everybody? I hope it does. It's really, really important in a second. So if that's true, then not only are we priests like the Levites, not only do we fill that office as the bride today, that's why we will be priests in the resurrection, we are also sons of David, the David. And what was the promise, the salt promise to him? To all your seed, to all your sons. So we've got it coming from both sides. We've got the priesthood, and we've got a rulership, a kingship. Both of them part of what's called a salt covenant. Now I put it in orange. It's I maybe underlined on your notes, but it's orange up here. For it was fitting for him, because of whom all are and through whom all are, in bringing many sons to glory. Now look at this. To make the prince of their deliverance, the prince of their salvation, Mashiach, perfect through sufferings. I underline that. It's highlighted. Keep that in the back of your mind just for a minute. We're going to get right back to that because this has everything to do with the salt covenant. This is part of the salt covenant. I don't know what slide it is. I don't have the papers up here, but whatever the next one is. 5. So we've got a priesthood and we've got kingship. 1 Peter 2:9, which is actually a quote from Exodus chapter 19. This is when Israel is at the foot of the mountain. Father says these words to them. But here's Peter reiterating it to the believers in Messiah. 1 Peter chapter 2, verse 9. But you are a chosen race, a royal. What does royal mean? Kingly. Sovereign. Who's the sovereign? David is. The son of David, the one who sits on the throne, who comes riding in on a donkey, lowly and humble and meek of heart. Jerusalem, daughters of Jerusalem, rejoice, for your king comes to you. He's royalty. And if he birthed us, what are we? Royal. Royal. You are a nation, but you are a chosen race, a royal what? Priesthood. What just got put together? Actually, this is all the way from Exodus, Father was telling us. What was Father's plan the whole time? To create a royal priesthood. And how does it start? All the way in the back of the story with a salt covenant for the priesthood and a salt covenant for the kingship, for royalty. And it all gets tied together in who? Messiah. And gets passed on to us as we walk with him. We are a royal priesthood, a set-apart nation, a people for a possession, that you should proclaim the praises of him who called you out of darkness into his marvelous light. All right, so if we are a royal priesthood, what should we be doing now? Well, there is no temple. There's no place for me to bring a lamb, a goat, or anything else. So do those things have nothing to do with us anymore? No, they have everything to do with us. We have to understand what they mean. We need eyes to see and ears to hear. Romans chapter 12, this is the Apostle Paul. And it's really a good portion of the book of Romans. He talks about this, but here's Romans chapter 12, verse 1. He says, I call upon you, meaning all of us, the people of Rome, but he's talking about believers of every age. I call upon you, therefore, brothers, through the compassion of Elohim, to present your bodies a living offering. Hold on a second. Are we still supposed to be giving offerings? Yes. Yes. In what context? In the context of Leviticus 1, 2, 3, 4, because that's the letter of the explanation as to what it's for, why you come, what the offering has to be. It always has to be seasoned with salt. It always has to be seasoned with salt. So here Saul's telling us, what are we? Priests, bringing our bodies like a lamb. Now I know we're very, very used to, and I'll share this more in a second, we're very, very used to making the analogy that Messiah is the lamb, right? He is the Lamb of Elohim, no doubt. John calls that out, meaning he is the Passover lamb. He is also the Yom Kippur, one of the Yom Kippur goats. But not every offering that's given, those two offerings, the Yom Kippur and even the red heifer, the Yom Kippur, and the Passover lamb, have nothing to do with the other offerings. The other offerings, if those are Messiah, who brings the other offerings? The people. So if Messiah is the lamb, if he is the red heifer, if he is the Yom Kippur offering, then what are you? All the other offerings. When it's needed, when the circumstance in your life requires it, that's who you are. And if we bring this offering, we must bring it with what? Salt. Not leaven. Romans 12, again, I call upon you therefore, brothers, through the compassion of Elohim, to present your bodies a living offering, set apart, well-pleasing to Elohim. These are all temple terms. This is all temple speak, which is your reasonable worship. Are we still supposed to give offerings? He just told us so. And do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind, so that you may prove what is that good and well-pleasing and perfect desire of Elohim. So Saul is already making the jump from the letter to the real meaning of all of the sacrifices. It isn't about a lamb. It isn't about a goat. There is no goat. There is no lamb. There is nothing that could actually do for us only what Messiah can do, but also what you can do as yourself, presenting yourself before Father. That's the bigger story here. But it needs the letter for us to understand some things. Because we've got salt, we've got leaven, We'll find out about fire and all the other things and why you give the offerings. They all mean something. It's probably more than I can even do in a message today, but they all mean something. They all teach us something about who we are and how we approach our Father. So the lesson of the leaven. We've done this before. We've talked about this before. So this is a review, I know, for some of us. But again, for those that may be watching for the first time. So we just read the instruction in Leviticus, don't bring the grain offering with leaven. That cannot go on the altar. Why? Well, we already read. Let me just go back to it real quick just to show you guys. Salt represents purity and preservation, while leaven represented impurity and sin. So you don't bring leaven to the altar. So here we go. Let me go back to... We learned a while ago some of these lessons, but here it is. If that's the definition of leaven, Matthew chapter 13, verse 33, another parable. This is the master. He spoke to them. The kingdom of heaven is, the kingdom of the heavens is like leaven, which a woman took and hid in 3 measures of meal until all was leavened. This is the 3 measures of meal is how the bread for the inside of the temple is made. The bread that the priest eat. The bread that the priest eat inside the temple is supposed to be unleavened. What did this lady do? She put leaven in something that should not have leaven, and the whole thing gets leavened or lumped up. And we talked about this before. This is not a good thing. This is a warning to us. So what's the warning? What should we not be doing? Bringing leaven to him as our offering. We should be bringing salt with our living sacrifice. Here's the same book, Matthew chapter 16, verse 11. This is the master's words to the disciples. How is it that you do not understand that I did not speak to you concerning bread? This is after the feeding of the thousands with bread and fish. Concerning bread, but to beware of the leaven of the Pharisees and Sadducees. Then they understood that he did not say to beware of the leaven of bread, but of the teaching of the Pharisees and Sadducees. So if leaven is impurity and sin, what else is Messiah now telling us is impurity and sin? Bad teaching, bad doctrine. And what's going to happen in the kingdom? Leaven is going to come into the kingdom. Bad teaching, bad doctrine. And our job is to get the leaven out and present our bodies not with leaven, but with salt. 1 Corinthians chapter 5, I think it's around verse 5. He says, your boasting is not good. This is Saul. Your boasting is not good. Do you not know that a little leaven leavens the entire lump? So they're bragging, even though they've got sin right in the midst of their congregation. If you read the verses earlier, there's a real issue going on in that congregation. And he's saying, you're boasting, they're just ignoring it. Nobody did anything about it. And he says, it's leavening all of you. That's the analogy that he's making here. He's saying, your boasting isn't good. Don't you know that a little leaven leavens the entire lump? Therefore, cleanse out the old leaven, so that you are a new lump, as you are unleavened. So if we're supposed to be unleavened, if he's referring now to us as an offering, a bread offering, and we're supposed to be unleavened, what happens if there's leaven in us and that's how we approach Father? That offering is not accepted. Cast out the old leaven. What is the whole week of unleavened bread for? Why do we celebrate the week of unleavened bread? Well, why do we celebrate Passover? Because Messiah is the Passover. Not the lamb, not the lamb that gets killed. Messiah is. The lamb is a type It's a shadow. It's an explanation. It's an example until the reality comes. The reality comes just like the lamb in the original story. What happens the night after the blood's put on the doorpost? The people leave Egypt. They leave slavery. They go out, and for a week, they are eating unleavened bread. That's a type. It's a shadow to teach us when Messiah comes, who says to the Pharisees, Sadducees, and all of us, we're all slaves. And they're like, well, we're not slaves. We've never been slaves. Of course, Israel's been slaves before. Babylon, Assyria, they've been slaves for a lot of their history. They were slaves in Egypt. And what did Father do to get them out of slavery? The Passover lamb and the unleavened bread, to show that the life they were living there now has to be changed. The leaven's got to get out. So we celebrated year after year after year, but most not understanding why we do it. You don't do it because it's the letter of the law. You do it to understand the spirit of the law. Messiah is the Passover lamb who gets us out of our spiritual Egypt, where we were all enslaved by sin. And then we practice, or we do the rehearsal of unleavened bread, knowing that just like he says here, what are we supposed to be doing? Getting the leaven out from amongst us. For, and look what it says here, it's in green, it's underlined up here. For also Messiah, our Passover, that's Pesach, but it's Passover, was slaughtered for us. So he's making the analogy. He's giving us a pattern. He's telling us that's the example, but the reality is Messiah. He was slaughtered for us. So then let us celebrate the festival. Are we supposed to celebrate the feast, the festivals? What'd he just say? Let us celebrate the festival, the feast. You still need the letter to begin to understand the basics, to begin to help you to understand the spiritual part of it. Does that make sense? I hope that makes sense to you guys. This is very important. So then let's celebrate the festival, not with old leaven, nor with the leaven of evil and wickedness, but with the unleavened bread of sincerity and truth. And if it's unleavened bread as an offering brought before Father, what does it have to have in it? Salt, not leaven. All right, again, I don't know what number this is. The next one, 7. So let's put this together for a second. Let's put the types, the shadows. Let's build a picture here. So if Messiah is the lamb, the Passover lamb of El, and Messiah gives his life like the Passover lamb did, Messiah suffers, as we just finished reading a few moments ago. He suffers to be made perfect. Through sufferings, he is perfected to be that offering. Then the Passover lamb is actually just a type of the Messiah story. Learn one story, and you will understand the other one. Now, he's also, as I said, the atonement. He's also the red heifer, but those are other messages for another day. It's too much to get into for today. But I want you to see that. So, did Father actually need and or want an actual lamb to be killed to make things right? No. It was Messiah. The people of ancient Israel, were they made right by those lambs that were slaughtered each Passover? Or do they, like us, are made right by the coming Messiah? They rehearsed it year after year after year after year till Messiah came. Messiah's sacrifice and resurrection covers everything behind him. All people that lived it, all people that did it. Because Messiah's offering also covers everybody beyond him. That's you and me. See, if that can cover us and it happened 2,000 years ago, can't what Messiah did cover what happened 2,000 years before that? because the cross was the real story the whole time. We just weren't ready to understand it. We just weren't capable of understanding it yet. We needed time to rehearse, time to practice, time to learn the letter, so that when the truth comes, we're able to see it. So if he's that offering, as I said before, then what are we? Here's a lamb, there's a goat, there's a bull, I think there. I don't see any pigeons or doves. I'm sure they're in there. There's a whole herd of sheep out here. And they're all coming as an offering. All right, why show this? The 5 offerings are a sin offering, a burnt offering, a trespass offering, a peace offering, and a meal or grain offering. Now, I'm not going to get into what all of them mean. It's just a bigger story. But here's the spirit of the law. If Messiah is the Passover lamb, then who are we? We're a trespass offering. When you trespass, you are a meal offering when you need to bring a meal offering. Sometimes we are a burnt offering when we need to bring a burnt offering to Father. Sometimes we are a sin offering. I'm not talking about the blood that takes away, puts our position in Father as right. I'm talking about unintentional sin that gets all over us as we live our day out, year after year, week after week, month after month. We all do dumb things. So when you do something dumb, when you sin unintentionally, meaning you did it, you made a mistake, you're a human being, it happens. So what do you do if you're a follower of Father? You just give up then? I'm done. I'm finished. I've lost my salvation now because I sinned. No, what do? You bring a sin offering. Well, what's the sin offering? Me. You. Not an offering to die. I think an offering to suffer. We'll find out in a minute. But I bring it as a living sacrifice. I repent. I come to him in all the humility that they would have had to come to the altar with. Because everybody knew why you were bringing whatever animal it was. There were different animals for different offerings. You sinned. It was out there in front. You had to confess it. You didn't just give you had to confess the sin. You trespassed. You went beyond. You had to bring an offering for that. And we still do today. We don't realize it. Nobody's been telling us this. Most of us don't realize it as we're reading it, but this is what Saul's talking about. Bringing your offering as a living sacrifice, which is your reasonable, what you should be doing. Just like all the house of Israel had to bring all their offerings into the temple or the tabernacle. Here is Romans chapter 8, verse 35. Listen to what Saul says. Who shall separate us from the love of the Messiah? Shall pressure or distress or persecution or scarcity of food or nakedness or danger or sword? What? Just that list by itself. Are those good things? Or are those like really, really hard things to endure? These are very, very difficult things to endure. And he's telling us these things should not what? Separate us from the love of Elohim. As it has been written, and this is Psalm 44 that he's quoting. This has been told to us over and over and over again until Messiah comes in its fullness. But here it is. Look what he quotes. For it has been written, for your sake, meaning Elohim's sake, we are killed all day long. By what? Pressure, distress, persecution, scarcity of food, nakedness, danger, sword, and I'm sure the list goes on and on and on and on and on and on and on from there. I.e., some sort of persecution, some sort of trouble, some sort of hardship, some sort of difficulty that the believers find themselves in, sometimes to their death. For your sake, we are killed all day long. Like what? We are reckoned as sheep for the slaughter. And we still are. That's the reality. That's the spirit of the story. There's still lambs. You're still a lamb or a goat or a bullock. That's who we are. That's what we are. That we're not the Passover lamb. We're not the atonement. And we're not the red heifer. He is. But we are all the other ones that need to be brought when they need to be brought with salt, not with leaven. Okay, we're getting there. Now that we got that as a basis, I told you to remember this. Hebrews 2:10. For it was fitting for him, because of whom all are, and through whom all are, in bringing many sons to glory, to make the prince of their salvation, the one who rides in on a donkey, perfect through sufferings. Every lamb that had to be brought had to be what? Perfect. No blemishes, no broken legs, no disease. Can't have 3 eyes. It can't have a busted hoof. It can't have 6 horns coming out of its head. It had to be perfect. Messiah was perfected. Not that, obviously he's El, right? He's the son of El, but he's also a human being. And what did he do in this life? Suffered. And did that separate him from the love of El? Nope. Did it waver him from the course that he was on? Did it really hurt and really, really pressure him and really, really stress him out and really, really bring him to the point of even asking, can this cup? Wasn't easy, because he did it as a man. And he was perfected. How? In the offering. Because what is every perfect lamb for? In the type. It's for an offering. In this case, the Passover lamb. Matthew chapter 5 and verse 11. So if Messiah is perfected as a lamb before Father, the salt covenant, and he came with salt, because we're going to find out, where do we get salt from? What is the analogy of salt? We now know what leaven is, right? We understand what leaven is in its reality. So what's salt? Salt's important. Now I'm just reading chapter 5, verse 11, but if you read the verses before this, blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the kingdom. Blessed are the poor. Blessed are those who are persecuted for righteousness. And it just goes through all of these things. And when you read through all of them, none of them are good. They're all tough. Blessed is the one who hungers and thirsts. Scarcity of food, but hungers and thirsts for righteousness. These are difficult things. Goes through that whole list, all the blesseds, we call them the Beatitudes, goes through that whole list and then gets to verse 11 and says this: blessed are you when they reproach and persecute you and falsely say every wicked word against you for my sake. Rejoice and be glad, because your reward in the heavens is great. For in this way they persecuted the prophets who were before you. Look at this, guys. Look at verse 13. It's highlighted up there. I don't know if it's on your notes like that, but it's highlighted up there. What does he tell us we are? You are the salt of the earth. But if the salt loses its flavor, its savoriness, it becomes tasteless, how can it be seasoned again? It is of no longer of any use, but to be thrown out and to be trodden down by men. So what's salt? Hungering and thirsting for righteousness. Pressure, the sword, problems, tribulation, hardships, scarcity of food, persecutions, they make us salt. Now, some of us might say, no, they make me salty. That's not what it means. I get being salty. He doesn't want you salty. He wants you seasoned. He wants us seasoned. Meaning, there is nothing in this life that can separate us from the love of Elohim. And we, like lambs, are being led to the slaughter. Every time you read of the offerings in the example in the Torah, and the animal is killed and it's on the altar and the aroma of it starts to go up, what's normally it doesn't have to be exact, but normally the description that we get when you read could you imagine what the whole altar smelled like with steak cooking all day and lamb cooking all day? Yeah, we have barbecues. You go to a barbecue, or even, when you're cooking in your house, people walk into your house and you're cooking and you smell that. And what does that smell of the food do for you? Oh, that's good. That's good. I can go for a steak, right? I can go for a steak. And what's Father's description of that happening? And how did that lamb get there? It suffered. It died. It was bled out, cut into pieces, and put on the altar. And what does Father say of it? It is a sweet smelling savor to his nostrils. What are you when you go through trial and hardship and difficulty and sickness and pain and disappointment, and you do not give up, you do not give in, you go through, you don't get salty, but you do get seasoned? What are you then? A sweet smelling savor to his nostrils. The letter of the law, the spirit of the law. This is big. This is who we are. You are the salt of the earth. But that last part of the verse kind of gets me. Because if you lose your saltiness, what are you good for? And listen, guys, we're all going through something. Everybody's enduring something. Through this life, we will endure many, many things. From loss of loved ones to even our own lives. From sickness, injury, marital issues, all sorts of things go on throughout this life. We make so many mistakes. We do so many dumb things. And each time we do, what are we supposed to learn from Leviticus 2? Either bring a burnt offering, or bring a trespass offering, or bring a peace offering, or just, the list. And what is that offering? It's me acknowledging I've made a mistake. I want to do better. I want to learn. I want to walk with him. I'm not going to let this make me bitter. I'm not going to get nasty about it. I'm not going to, woe is me. Listen, you can say woe is me and have hurt for what's going on with you, but don't let that run your life. Everybody gets depressed from time to time. We all get depressed from time to time. Struggle is struggle. I don't care what struggle you're going through. Struggle is struggle. It hurts. And we can say to people, listen, I know where you're coming from. I feel for you. But honestly, nobody feels what you feel. And you got to go through it all by yourself. We can be there alongside you, and that's comforting. But on that day, when it's your time, you have to walk that valley of the shadow of death alone. Well, really not. His rod and his staff, they comfort you. You got to approach it with salt. With salt. But if we lose our saltiness, if we let this world around us take our saltiness away, we're in trouble. We're in trouble. Again, salt represents purity and preservation. What preserves you through trial and tribulation? Salt. Attitude. Perseverance. Faith. Through the sufferings. While leaven represents impurity and sin. I decided to do this today because I thought about something this week that really bothered me. It's bothered me for a long, long time. I've probably even mentioned it a couple of times over the years. When you read about the story of Lot, right? He's in Sodom and Gomorrah, right? So the story of Lot, the angels come to Abraham. They're going to go to Sodom and Gomorrah. Sodom and Gomorrah is going to be made an example for all people. Just like Father gives us examples and types of everything else in the Torah, he gave us this example too. Because that example isn't just in the Torah, in the letter of the law, there is going to be a much bigger presentation of that story. And the Master told us so. Here's Luke chapter 17, verse 28. And likewise, as it came to be in the days of Lot, he's talking about the days of the coming of the Son of Man. He says they were eating, they were drinking, they were buying, they were selling, they were planting, and they were building. I'm sorry, they were doing a lot more than that. Right? But they were doing these things too, but they were doing more than that. Here's 2 Peter chapter 2 and verse 6. Peter tells us this about Lot. He says, and having reduced to ashes the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah, he condemned them to destruction, having made them an example, a type, a shadow to those who afterward would live wickedly, and rescued righteous Lot, who was oppressed with the indecent behavior of the lawless. For day after day, that righteous man, dwelling among them, tortured his righteous soul, his righteous being, by seeing and hearing their lawless works. And when you go back and you read the story, Lot sat at the gate. He was a leader amongst the people. Maybe not the leader, but he was part of leadership there. The guy sitting at the gate's the first person you met when you walked into a town. You know, they checked you out. They gave you the rundown. This is how we live. This is what's going on. My question is, if he was a righteous man, if he was so oppressed and so grieved, why didn't he leave? That's what I've always wondered. Why didn't he just leave? Why didn't he just get out? You know, he could have just bought a plot of land somewhere and started homesteading with nobody else around him but chickens. He could have done that, but he didn't. Why? And how long did he stay there? Until Father took him out by someone else, Abraham, interceding on his behalf. So I was thinking about this, and on, I don't know, Tuesday, Wednesday, I thought to myself, why would he stay? Why would anybody stay? Now you gotta, I mean, if he's a righteous man, he's a relative, a nephew of Lot. He knew the El of Abraham. He knew the story. He lived it with his uncle. He saw all of the amazing things. So why stay there? And if he was there, what do you think Lot did during that whole time he was there? I'm sure he talked to people. I'm sure he told them about the God of Abraham, the El of Abraham. I'm sure while he was suffering through all of this, he was preaching. I'm sure he spoke to his daughters. I'm sure he spoke to his sons and did everything he could to raise them in the things of El. But at some point, they lost their saltiness. He did not. He did not. And you read the story, even as the angels come, his own family laughs and rejects the story as some fanciful thing. And you know, with his daughters and the guys at the door and all that whole mess, why it's called Sodom, all of that stuff going on. So why did he stay there? Because he was the salt of the earth. And it was a testimony, a witness to everyone around him family, friends, neighbors, people he worked with, of who the God of Abraham was. So I think honestly he stood there and stayed there for his kids, seeing them start to fall away, hoping over and over and over again that they would get right. I think he stayed there to be salt. Until, and what's going on? Marriage, giving in marriage, life is going on, and the world around him wants nothing to do with the God of Abraham. But he stayed. Until the angels came for him and removed him. That is salt. That's an offering of a sacrifice with salt. That's a Torah example of everything Matthew 5 tells us. So, should we just run off and buy a homestead and escape? If you got the money to do it, that's fine, you know. But what should we do? We should be salt. And we should beware of leaven. And we should bring the proper offering in the proper context with the proper heart at the proper time, which is your reasonable service. And in the midst of your hardship and your trouble and your hurt and your pain and your disappointments, you do not give up on him, even to the day when you die on your deathbed and your body is given as a lamb to the sacrifice. You bring that offering with salt as a sweet smelling savor to the nostrils of our El. Beloved, that is Abba's word for you for today. The salt of the covenant. I'm hungry now. Can everybody see how the story has already been told? And if you understand its letter, it makes the rest of the story so much easier to put into perspective. Again, it's if you have eyes to see it. You got to start with something. You got to start with faith. You got to start with the seed, that little bit, believing just that little bit. And then let Father go on from there and tell us the whole story. Think about how much we still don't know. We still don't get. That's mind-boggling to me. But whatever you're going through, whatever hardships, don't give up, guys. Don't give up. We need each other. We do. But you need Abba. You got to get through. There should be nothing in this life that separates you from the love of El. Father, we thank you for your word. We thank you for your Son, who is the Word personified. And Abba, we ask and we pray, just like we did to start this service, that you continue to give us eyes to see and ears to hear, and then hearts that are willing to obey it. Father, that we might not take not one jot or one tittle away from your instruction, but that we might learn it, understand it, and apply it the way Messiah has taught us to, the way your Torah teaches us in its patterns. Until that day, when you send angels for us, just like you did for Lot. We come to you on the altar of our heart with salt, with a salt covenant, as priests and as royal sons. And we love you, Father. In the name of the one who died and rose again, Yahushua of Nazareth, we say amen and amen. Oh, God bless everybody. Y'all bless everybody. Have a wonderful day out there. We're going to go eat some food right now, guys. Wish you guys were here with us. Give us a shout out when you do listen to this. And don't forget, Monday morning, we go right back to our morning manna. Guys, have an awesome rest of the day. Say it with me, everybody. Shabbat Shalom.